Navigate the gauntlet of uncertainty the world throws at your business with SAP. Whether it's a tropical storm hitting your warehouse or a short supply of those little plastic twist ties, SAP can help you tackle those unexpected crushing setbacks with its AI-powered capabilities. To pivot to new suppliers, automate paperwork, and source the twist ties you need at the price you want, so your business can stay unstoppable. Learn more at sap.com/uncertainty.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, it's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contracts. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
The Roger Stone Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Joining me now is John Carney. He is the economics and finance editor at Breitbart News, where he leads their coverage of business, markets, and economic policy. Before joining Breitbart, John Carney built an extensive career in financial journalism. He worked for CNBC, covering Wall Street and finance, reported for the Wall Street Journal, and served as editor-in-chief of Dealbreaker.com. He also oversaw the Wall Street and economics section of the Business Insider. His reporting has appeared in the New York Times, Fortune, New York Magazine, and the New York Post, among others. But he also has an extensive background in law. A graduate of the University of Pennsylvania's Law School, he practiced at 2 prestigious law firms, and in that role he represented banks, hedge funds, and private equity firms, giving him first-hand experience in the financial industry that would later inform his journalistic career. Beyond the newsroom, John Carney's been a frequent guest and commentator on finance, on economics, but this is his first time on the Roger Stone Show. I called John and asked him to be on the show today because, well, I think Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is among President Trump's very best appointees. Scott Bessent is an outside-the-box thinker. He's a strong supporter of cryptocurrency. He's a libertarian. He's a shrewd analyst of the markets. He's a strong believer in gold, and he's a brilliant negotiator. He is, in my opinion, among the president's best appointees. But this week in Bloomberg, there was an effort to smear Scott Bessent, the Secretary of the Treasury, essentially trying to equate his mortgage and ownership of actually 4 homes with the mortgage fraud perpetrated by Dr. Lisa Cook, who got caught red-handed, claiming that 2 different residents were her principal primary legal residence, thus getting a tax break, a lower insurance rate, and a lower mortgage rate on both properties. John Carney wrote a brilliant rebuttal for Breitbart.news, telling us why the situation surrounding Scott Bessent's mortgage is completely and totally unlike that surrounding Dr. Lisa Cook. And I welcome him into this Roger Stone Show now. John, welcome.
Yep, thank you, Roger. I'm glad to be here, and thanks for having me on the show.
So I want you to break this down for us because this is typical of the left's whataboutism. We know that Dr. Lisa Cook, a member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, very clearly, based on, again, the research of Sam Antar, the guest who just left us, engaged in mortgage fraud, claiming that 2 different properties would be her principal primary legal residence. As I say, getting a tax break from the state, getting a lower mortgage rate, a lower insurance rate. Turns out she had a 3rd property, which she alternatively calls a second home. Other times she calls it an investment property. The situation surrounding Secretary Bessent is completely and totally different based on what I read in your piece. So break this down for us, if you would.
That's absolutely right. When you get a a mortgage and you describe the home as your primary residency, usually what you have to do is you have to move in within 60 days, and you have to have it be your primary residence for at least a year. And you can only have one of these. It often means that you get a lower rate. It definitely means you get lower fees, particularly if the mortgage is going to be later sold on to something like Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac. And Lisa Cook's mortgages, the problem is she got mortgages from different financial institutions within a few weeks of each other, and they were both written down as primary residences. So she received a financial benefit for doing this, and it's very hard to believe that she somehow forgot she already had one primary residence. The banks, as far as we can tell, did not have any clue that she was calling two different homes her primary residence. What happened with Scott Bessent? He does have a few homes. He has one in New York City that is his primary residence. It was before he became Treasury Secretary. Now, I guess his primary residence is in Washington, D.C. But he had a home in Westchester and Bedford Hills, and another in Massachusetts. He went to his bank, which is Bank of America, and they're his private bank. They hold all of his money, so they know exactly where he lives and what his primary residence is. And they did a deal in which they lent him a total of $21 million for these two homes that he was buying. And and the mortgage documents that got filed, they do say that each of these is checked off as there's a attestation that these will be my primary residence. And that's what Bloomberg focused on. They looked at that, but what they ignored was the fact that there's a letter agreement, and the mortgage documents say this has to be my primary residence unless I have in writing from my bank an agreement that says they don't have to be. And as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, when he got these mortgages way back in 2007, he got that letter. That letter exists. Bank of America has said they absolutely were not under any they weren't being defrauded. They weren't being fooled. They knew that he did not plan to use these two homes. They're not investment properties. He was going to use them as residences for himself, as far as I can tell. But he wasn't trying to fool the bank. The bank wasn't fooled. There is a letter that the bank wrote that said, no, this is all on the up and up. We know exactly what these are. And the mortgages are, frankly, so big, they weren't going to be sold on to be, bundled into a mortgage-backed security. So there was no extra fees attached for the, not calling them primary residences. That didn't matter. This is, Scott Bessent's private bank, Bank of America, doing a very bespoke deal for a guy who had millions and millions of dollars in the bank with them. And by the way, those mortgages got paid off. They were, they never ended up a problem, and nobody was deceived. Bloomberg's story made it seem as if Scott Bessent's mortgages were just like Lisa Cook's. They're nothing alike at all.
Yeah, the situation surrounding Lisa Cook is really quite amazing. She applies for the second mortgage within weeks of the first. So she can't, it's not a mistake. She doesn't know.
That's right.
She hasn't forgotten that she previously, just 2 weeks earlier, claimed that a property in Ann Arbor, Michigan was her principal legal residence. Then she claimed that a property outside of Atlanta was. They can't both be. Then the president terminates her from the Federal Reserve Board of Governors for cause, which I believe he has the right to do. By the way, 3 previous Federal Reserve Board governors resigned from the position when they were just under investigation prior to their being charged or referred to the Justice Department. Then she sues in the District of Columbia, claiming that the president doesn't have the right to terminate her. But the clerk of courts, one Angela Caesar, refers the case to a federal judge, Gia Cobb, who's a member of the same Black Women's College sorority as Dr. Cook, which to me is a blatant conflict of interest, one that should have eliminated or caused Judge Cobb to recuse herself. Needless to say, she did not, because this is the District of Columbia, where I can tell you firsthand the Constitution, the law, the rules, the facts, the evidence, none of those things matter. Not in the District of Columbia. That case, of course, was found, Judge Cobb found for Lisa Cook. There's a big surprise. Then it went to the D.C. Court of Appeals. They upheld the ruling by Judge Cobb. Of course they did. It's the same court who upheld the unconstitutional gag order on me when I was standing trial, having been framed in the Russian collusion hoax. Once again, it has nothing to do with the law. It has to do with a political agenda. Why should we care? Here's why we should care. Because the Federal Reserve had a meeting last week in which they voted on the question of whether to cut interest rates. And Dr. Cook got to vote in that meeting. I think she should have been disallowed. She should have the good taste and judgment to resign, but she refuses to do so. I'm in favor of the repeal of the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 entirely, but hey, that's just me. When we come back, John, given your extensive background covering financial issues, I'd like to get your opinion on the Fed and whether this 1/4 point cut was sufficient based on the current economic data regarding inflation and unemployment. To me, it's Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve Board, who's acting politically, not the president, who, like every president, has been jawboning for an interest rate cut when he thinks it is the right thing for the economy. To me, it looks like the Federal Reserve is just trying to slow down the Trump boom, which seems to be happening anyway. You're listening to The Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Networks. We're talking to John Carney, the economics and finance editor of Breitbart News, and we'll be back with more political and financial news on the other side. So please don't go away. You're in The Roger Stone Show right here in Red Apple Audio Networks, and we'll be right back.
The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back. In just a minute, we're going to have that recipe for meatloaf Hungarian style, so be ready to jot it down. But before we do that, I want to ask our guest, John Carney, who's the economics and finance editor at Breitbart News, his opinion on the Federal Reserve's decision this past week to cut interest rates by 1/4 point. John?
They made a terrible mistake. They're behind the curve. They should have cut months ago, and they're playing catch up now. Trump's new appointee to the Federal Reserve, Stephen Myron, he said that they should have cut by 50 basis points, and that seems right to me. They need to. They have 2 more meetings this year. They should actually cut by 50 or 75 basis points in October. Unfortunately, it looks like they're going to cut 25. You're absolutely right. Lisa Cook should have stepped down. Everybody else in her position would have stepped down. We've had Fed governors, Fed presidents be investigated, and they stepped down under investigation, even though later they were cleared. But they thought that the institution of the Fed was important enough that they wouldn't stay in place. Lisa Cook has decided that she's the one who's important, and frankly, Jerome Powell should tell her that she should at least sit out the meetings while this process gets litigated. Look, if she wins in the end, which I do not believe she will, the Supreme Court will eventually say, yes, President Trump can remove her. But while this is going on, she should not be tainting the Federal Reserve with her influence while still under investigation.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Also, new reports this week of plagiarism in her past. So this is not somebody of pristine character. I often wonder whether she is not just, in fact, a DEI hire for the Federal Reserve. But you're right. I wish she had the good judgment to step down. Unfortunately, this is not about the good of the country. It's not about the institution of the Federal Reserve. It's all about her. All right, I want to thank our guest, John Carney, the economics and finance editor of Breitbart News, for his incisive analysis of the smear job on one of President Trump's very best appointments, Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent. Thank you, John.
Thank you very much for having me, Roger.
Thanks for listening to The Roger Stone Show. You can hear The Roger Stone Show Sunday afternoons at 3. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?